We are in this series, Creative Design, right? That everything that we do this year is going to be under that banner of creative design. We've been talking about relationships and how we were created to have them with God and with each other. And then last week we talked about how everybody gets to play. And that as a part of our design is to go and do this stuff and everyone gets to play. And how that is a staple in the vineyard as well. So we're going to continue within that creative design. And we're going to talk about a very, 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 very important thing that we were created to do. One of the most important things. I personally believe it's for relationship and then this thing. I think that's the order, in my opinion, that it goes in. We were created to have a relationship, and then we were created to do this thing. And that's worship. We were created to worship. Right? Oh, yeah, thanks, Nick. The scripture tells us to worship over 182 times. The words worship and praise are together in scripture over 250 times. So I think it's pretty important if it's saying it over and over and over again. We always say in quests and stuff, you watch out for repetition, where the Bible repeats itself. Okay, worship, it repeats itself a lot. Tells us to worship, right? It talks about how even the rocks cry out and all of creation worships, and we are part of that creative design. And if we want to get back to that, right, we talked about last week about how everything was created with an order. Sin came in, disrupted that order, and now our job is to try to get as close back to that order as possible. Well, in order to do that, we have to worship. But here's the thing, is that everybody worships something. This isn't like a Christian thing. This isn't just, only religious people worship. Everyone worships something. Most people, it's probably money, success, relationship, sex. Most people worship something, right? And you'll have this debate between believers and non-believers. And they'll be like, why would I serve a God like this? Or, why would I obey something like this? Or why would I give my time to something like that? But they do it with something else. They just don't recognize it or don't call it that. They're a slave to their job, but they don't see it as that's what they're worshiping. They're worshiping their boss. Every single person has something that they're worshiping, because worship, a lot of times we'll sit here and we'll be like, oh yeah, worship's clapping your hands and praising the Lord and singing and all that stuff. And people will use the verses with David singing and praising with all his might, and that's great and stuff. But worship isn't just music. Worship is what you focus on. Right. What you give your attention to, what you give your money to, what you give your time and energy to, that is the thing that you worship. And even believers worship something else. We are so easily persuaded into something else that we will worship something more so than God. And God is a jealous God, let me just tell you. Most of the time, he'll take that thing away. I remember my grandpa, he had, was it grandpa or you for motorcycles? Papa, yeah. Okay, so my grandfather, he had just 22 motorcycles all at once. He was obsessed, and he was so good. He used to be able to do the thing where, driving down the road and you stand up on it, and, he was so good, and he loved motorcycles. And it became such, a special thing to him that he started spending more time with the bikes than he did his family. He started making decisions based upon what bike he wanted to buy and sell and all this stuff, and it got to the point where every single, God kept saying, I need you to focus on me. I need you to focus on me. And he's like, I'm going to go work on my bike. And it got to the point where every single time he tried to swing his leg over a bike, he'd get violently ill and throw up. Because God was like, excuse me, I said pay attention. You're worshiping me, not those bikes. And he ended up having to sell all of his bikes. He had to get rid of all of them, because he was worshiping something and putting that thing higher than God. So, I could sit here and ask the question, what are you worshiping? Which is a great question to ask, and you should probably ask yourself that. What are you worshiping? Is it the Lord or is it something else? Are you putting something above? You can sit here all day long and say, I love Jesus and I want to serve God and all this stuff, but if there's something that you are putting above him in your priority checklist, we got some problems. You are no longer worshiping God, you are worshiping that thing. Yes? Okay. Because worship is what we focus on. But here's something really cool about worship, and we're going to talk about a story in the Bible that talks about worship for like 2 seconds, and it's actually really cool. Because we now establish, okay, worshiping is what you give your time, energy, and attention to, all right? But let's look at the cool stuff, because worship is so cool. It is so cool, you guys. And so we're going to look at a story out of Judges 7. And we're going to look at a story about a man named Gideon. Now, there's a lot in here, but basically the Lord said to this man named Gideon that he was to go out and he was to defeat this group called the Midianites. But Gideon only had like 300 people. And the Midianites had like a bunch of people. Have you ever seen the movie like 300? Like This Is Sparta? Okay? Like that's the status of what we're talking about here, right? So Gideon tells God, it says in Judges 2, it says that the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give you to the Midianites into their hands. Lest Israel claim glory for itself against me, saying, my own hand has saved me. Now therefore proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and afraid, let him turn and depart from the mount of Gilead. And 2,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. Okay? And then the Lord tells Gideon, the people are still too many. And so he's like, bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. So God's kind of like wiping them out a little bit, right? Do you guys know this story? Some of you? So basically what's going on is Gideon takes this little tiny army of 300 against this army of 10,000, okay? And God tells Gideon to do this and to do this and to do this. And as he does these things, he starts to like chop away at the amount of people that Gideon's going to have to face, right? And then we get to this really cool part in Judges 7, where basically God tells Gideon to kind of go into the Midianite like camp place and be a spy and like listen to what they're doing and listen to what they're saying, right? Listen. And so he does that, and when Gideon gets there, he hears of these two guys, and one of them's telling the other one about a dream that they had. And this dream is super important. So it says in Judges 7:15, it says, and so it was when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation. Oh, wait, hold on, let's back up. Yeah, I know. Gideon heard the dream, and this man said, I had a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian. It came to a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent collapsed. This is the dream that this guy has. And it says, then his companion answered and said, this is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp. So these two guys are talking, and this one guy's like, I had a dream about a loaf of barley and this, and the other guy interprets the dream, and he's like, oh. He's like, that's basically saying, like, we're going to be, like, fall on the sword of Gideon. Like, we're going to be destroyed. So Gideon's spying on these people, and he's listening to these men. And this one guy's like, I had this dream. The other man interprets the dream. And basically it tells Gideon that, like, they know that God is going to deliver them into his hands. It just reassures him again that they're going to win, right? Okay. And then it says, when Gideon heard the telling of this dream and its interpretation, that he fell down and worshiped. Okay? That's really important. Then he got up, he returned, and he went and did what God told him to do, and they won. Woo-hoo. You guys following me? Okay. And what's really, really cool about this is that, like, it's a pretty famous battle, pretty famous thing in the Bible to talk about. But the smallest little thing that you could just overlook is the biggest thing, in my opinion, that Gideon did. And that's that he worshiped. It says he fell down and he worshiped. And most of the time we'll pass over that. And there's a lot of stories in the Bible that talk about worship. There's a lot of stories in the Bible, like David dancing in the streets. Like, those are the big ones, the ones that we could all talk about, the ones that we all know, right? But what happens when you read this, what I feel like God was telling me, is that this little scenario, there's something that we can really, really learn and take away from worship in this story. It's a very complicated story. You should probably go read it. But there's something to take away about this story in particular, and that's what worship does to us and to Gideon and to everyone, basically. This is what worship does, right? Worship reveals God to us. It reveals God's plans to us. When we worship God, when we praise him, when we talk to him, when we're giving him our attention, you think of worship that way. It's giving God your attention. Okay? It reveals his plan and himself to you, which is kind of cool. You guys ever had moments of worship where you're, whether it's prayer or singing or sitting in silence or gardening or whatever, right? And you start to hear the voice of God or have an interaction with him. That's when that happens, when you're giving him your attention and you have that worship, right? So it reveals who God is to us. But worship also reveals who we are to God. It also reveals who we are to ourselves. It unfolds our hearts. When you're in those moments of deep agony and deep worship, your true feelings about things tend to come out. It's really hard to hide that because worship is vulnerable. It's this intimate thing that you can't really do it right and be guarded. It's an oxymoron. You can't do both, right? So it reveals who we are, which I think is really cool. Yes? No? Okay. The coolest thing about worship, right, is it's kind of like a circle. It's like a cycle. Thank you. Yeah. Where worship gets us into the presence of God. But being in the presence of God makes us want to worship. And you do this over and over again. You worship so that you can get into that presence of God and give him your attention. And then you experience him, just a breath, just a little pass by, just a little like tap on the shoulder. And that alone, that tiny little glimpse alone, makes you want to cry out and worship. And so it's a never-ending cycle, which is what was created to be, was this never-ending cycle. It's what we were created to do. A part of creation, being with the rocks, with the trees, with, all of this stuff, right? And all that's well and good. And it's you can sit here and you can say it's easy to do that. You can sit here and you say, I worship every Sunday. I worship in the car. I worship in the shower, which I do. And I am good. Let me tell you. I'm winning the Grammy in there. But worship is something that I think every single person yearns for. Whether you realize it or not, we yearn for that connection. We yearn for that interaction. So if we don't know the Creator, we tend to worship things we created. They worshiped a golden calf. If you don't know the one who created you and know the reason why you're yearning to worship, you will go and invert and worship other things, right? And our creative design is to put our attention towards God, to get back to that order that he had us in the first place, and to give him our attention and to give him worship, right? Well, as we go through creative design, and we know that this is our creative design, it is to worship. The Vineyard's creative design is to worship. If you look at the Vineyard genetic code, we're going to be talking about this a lot for the next couple of weeks. The vineyard genetic code and how it matches the way we were created to be in the first place. It matches God's order and God's creative design. The biggest thing I would say, in my opinion, the biggest thing that the vineyard does or focuses on or that makes them a vineyard is worship. You can go into any vineyard across the globe and they're going to have worship. Most of them are going to be continuity of feel. Even though the pastors are super, super different, the churches are going to look really different, the continuity is going to be the same. There are vineyards all over the world. There are vineyards that are held in high school gyms. There are vineyards that are held in malls. There are vineyards that are held in warehouses, in people's homes, in parks, everything, right? But they all have the same staples, and worship is one of them, which I think is really cool. Also, what the vineyard will do with worship is that every event you go to, not even just Sunday service, every event you go to, how many of you guys go to small group? How many of you guys worship in your small group? We, as the young women's small group, we don't sing and play instruments very well. I mean, we can, but like none of us want to, and you don't want us to, you know? But one of the things that we do is we play worship. We'll play 1 to 2 songs every week and sit and sulk and worship the Lord. You don't have to have a guitar. You don't have to have someone being able to sing like Mariah Carey. You don't have to have a Monica in every small group. But you will go into every event that they do in vineyard settings and vineyard style, you will find worship. It's huge. It is because we know and we believe that at our core, it is what we were designed to do. It's how we get into God's presence. And how do you heal? You get into God's presence, and you stay there. You guys are slacking. You get into God's presence. You stay there. And so being a part of the vineyard, you will always find that worship is at the forefront of what they do. Yes? Okay, cool thing about that is that vineyard, if you guys didn't know, we're going back to creative design, they developed and kind of created a new way of worship. Now, it's a way of worship that in today's world, churches all over have now taken. And they don't even know where it came from. They don't even know why they sing the songs that they sing. They don't even know that the songs that they're singing are vineyard. They have no idea. But vineyard kind of changed the way that worship was formatted. You guys have to remember, we came out of a very old school Bible teaching churches, right? The vineyard came out of Calgary. They were very, very much Bible. There's nothing wrong with the Calgary, but the vineyard wanted to change things up and spice things up, and it was created by hippies. And the hippies wanted to sing. They wanted to play the guitar on the beaches of California. So they did. And in doing that, they created a difference. And what the biggest difference that the vineyard movement of worship, and you guys could go look this up, it's really, really cool. Get the book like The Radical Middle, you'll read it. Vineyard DNA, you'll read it. And even if you just look it up in history, the vineyard created this whole new wave of worship that now we look at, and in our time, we're like, that's normal. But it wasn't normal. Basically what they did, for some reason, these hippies on a beach, made worship that most of the worship at the time was very horizontal, okay? You sang songs like, all right, cool. The worship leader's out. You sing I know, but you sing songs about Jesus, right? Like even if you listen to the radio today, you have songs like Let Me Tell You About My Jesus, okay? That's a horizontal worship. That's a horizontal song. It's singing to other people about God. That's why it's horizontal. We're on the same field here, right? And that's what worship was. It was horizontal. Think of your hymns, right? Your old school stuff. You stand up, you sing, you sit down. And all of those songs were very, very horizontal. You're singing about God. That's why we say today, like, not every song is a worship song. But the vineyard, these guys, That wasn't enough for them. They wanted an intimacy. They wanted a depth that wasn't there. And so they started singing songs to God. And the worship went from a horizontal playing field to a vertical playing field. Now we sing to God. We talk to God when we worship. We're not talking about God. And that's the biggest way that you can know, especially in the vineyard, if it's a worship song or if it's just a good Christian song. Does it sing about God or does it sing to God? And the vineyard created this vertical worship that didn't exist, at least not where they were or where we are. And it changed the game. Imagine now, I can't even fathom just singing about God. The lack of intimacy you would feel, the lack of interaction you would have. That's like dating somebody but never actually talking to that person. You just tell everybody else you're dating. It's weird. But that's how it would be. And so these guys, they changed that worship. My mother has always described worship as turning and kissing the face of God. That's what she's always told me. That's what worship is to turn and kiss the face of God. And the way that they did this was to make worship something that every single person could do. Like everybody gets to play. The songs in itself are very, very simple, easy songs. In order to play a worship song at a small group, learn about 5 chords on the guitar. Play in the key of D. That's all you need. That's it. They're very simple. They're a 4-chord progression. Every single song is a 4-chord progression. And you can play 4 chords and loop it again. Very, very simple. They're not complicated. They're not hard to play. But also the style that they sing in, their songs are very repetitive. They say the same words over and over and over again. They loop back. They've got a verse and a chorus. Most of them didn't even have a second verse. Just verse and chorus. Verse and chorus. And they did that for a reason, because not everybody can be musically inclined and know all of the words to all of the songs and all of the chords. I'm telling you right now, I could remember pretty much every song I have ever heard in my entire life. My father can't remember any song he's ever heard in his entire life. Yeah, that's it. He's out. He's got nothing. And there's the songs that his wife has sang for 37 years. And he could not tell you one of them. He doesn't have the capacity. His brain doesn't work that way. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people whose brains don't work that way. They can't remember all of these details. So the Vineyard took these songs, all of these hymns. Y'all, okay, my favorite hymn is Come Thy Fount. And I'm telling you right now, Come Thy Fount is a complicated song. And I have heard it a million times, and I'm still like, which verse is coming up? Okay, that's the songs that you guys were singing and we were singing, were these hymns that you had to have a book. Because it was so big, it took a book. You guys. Not even a full page. It's not even a full page. And this is what we sing. And they did it on purpose so that people didn't need projectors. And people didn't need a book. And people didn't need a church. That they could remember the lyrics as they were going about their life. They were taking the dog for a walk. They were working or doing the dishes or driving to work, or they were sitting on a beach with a bunch of guitars. They didn't need to pass out chord sheets. They didn't need to practice beforehand. They made it so incredibly simple that anyone, anywhere, could sing them. That little kids will remember them. We sing songs. I just saw on one of them, it was written in 1988. I could sing that song with my eyes closed, spinning in a circle. Because I've heard it too many times. No, I've heard it too many times. And it's simple. It's easy. And for some reason, worship has become so complicated. We make it so complicated. And I'm not saying anything against the churches or anything against the musicians that have really cool, intricate songs. They're fantastic. And they're super awesome to blast in the truck. They're really cool when we're playing softball and you have it on your phone, right? And you've got all of these instruments going and all of this stuff. Going to Christian concerts are awesome. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. And the Vineyard wanted to make it so simple that anyone could do it. So simple that you could close your eyes and still know the words. That is amazing. And I grew up in the Vineyard, so to me, this is just normal. This is just how it is. Vertical worship is always what we do. But that wasn't always the case. And so the Vineyard really, really, really understood and knew that at our core, at ourselves and our creative being, we were designed to worship like the rest of creation. And they made a very simple, easy, basic way for us to do that. And it was a way that spread like wildfire throughout the entire country and world, and churches do it today, and they don't know where it came from. But you guys are really cool because you guys get to be a part of the culture it came from. And it's amazing. So we wanted to switch the way that we did this today because I wanted to talk about worship first. I wanted to remind you guys that worship is turning your attention to the Lord. That you were created, every fiber of your being, to worship. And that because we live in an amazing, amazing place and we have an amazing worship leader and we come from an amazing culture of worship, we are taking it back old school. And we are going to worship the way that we were created to. We are going to worship the way the Vineyard designed it to. And I really want you guys to just push into that. And don't think about the craziness and the words and this and that. It's all about you're just having a conversation with God today. Does that sound good to do?